She was just a teenage girl. No sword training, no noble birth, no plans for war. And yet, she led an army, challenged a king, and changed the fate of a nation. This is the story of St. Joan of Arc, the warrior saint, the mystic girl from Domremy, and one of the most courageous souls the world has ever known. Joan was born around 1412 in a tiny village in northeastern France during one of the darkest chapters of her country's history, the 100 Years' War. England had invaded, France was falling apart, people were exhausted, and into this chaos came a girl named Jeanne. She was a farmer's daughter, poor, illiterate, completely unknown, but deeply devout. From a young age, Joan was known for her prayer life. She was serious, kind, a little different. And then, when she was just 13 years old, something happened. She began to hear voices. Not imagined ones, but voices that she believed came from God himself, through his saints Saint Michael the Archangel, Saint Catherine of Alexandria, Saint Margaret of Antioch. They told her something wild, that she, this teenager, this peasant girl, was called to save France. She tried to ignore it at first, but the voices kept coming, and eventually she obeyed. At just 16, Joan travelled to a nearby stronghold and asked to speak to the local commander. She told him, bluntly, that God had sent her to help the Dauphin, Charles, reclaim his throne. He laughed at her. Most did. But she persisted. She predicted a military outcome that later came true, and suddenly people started paying attention. Joan, this teen girl in a dress, was summoned to the royal court. And Charles, desperate and out of options, decided to test her. He disguised himself and placed a nobleman on his throne. Joan walked in and went straight to Charles. She didn't just recognize him. She whispered something in his ear, something only he and God could know. That moment changed everything. Soon after, Joan was given armor, a banner, and command of troops. She didn't fight with a sword. She carried a flag with the names of Jesus and Mary. And the soldiers? They followed her. She brought them to confession. She cleaned up their camps. She prayed constantly. Then came her first big mission, liberate the city of Orléans. Everyone thought it was a suicide mission, but Joan rallied the troops, stormed the walls, and won. She won. Word spread like fire. Joan became a symbol of hope, a living miracle. By 17, she was leading France's armies into battle after battle, helping Charles finally reclaim Reims, the traditional place of coronation. And it was there that Charles VII was crowned king, because a teenage girl in armor said God sent her to make it happen. But Joan's story doesn't end in triumph. Politics turned. Charles grew distant, and in 1430 Joan was captured by the Burgundians, enemies of France. They sold her to the English, and Charles did nothing to save her. She was put on trial, not as a prisoner of war, but as a heretic. She was just 19 years old. They interrogated her for months, tried to trap her with trick questions, but Joan, she held her own. Her answers were honest, simple, and filled with faith. When they asked if she was in God's grace, she replied, "If I am not, may God put me there, and if I am, may he keep me there." Theologians still call that one of the greatest responses ever given in court. But they condemned her anyway. On May 30th, 1431, Joan was burned at the stake in Rouen. She asked for a cross. They held it up before her eyes as the flames rose. Her last word was Jesus. She died, alone, misunderstood, betrayed, but never faithless. 20 years later, the Church re-examined her trial and declared her innocent. In 1920, she was officially canonized as Saint Joan of Arc, patroness of France, soldiers, and those who are mocked for their faith. Joan was no myth. She was real, a girl who believed God could do the impossible through her, and he did. Thanks for watching. If Joan's story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more Catholic stories, and share this with someone who needs a reminder of what faith can do.